Thunder Grunt.
Hey guys!
Hey, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show that treats the final edit of a movie like it's the screenplay.
That's right.
It's so like Kevin Smith the way you say it. It feels like comic book men or
I
something.
know. Well, how am I supposed to say it? Go around the table, introduce yourselves. What's your Twitter handle?
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and full-time script consultant. And my Twitter handle is @JimmyRGeorge.
I am Jamie Nash, screenwriter, and my Twitter handle is @Jamie_Nash. Quick plug. I think by this time my book Nomad, which is kind of a horror sci-fi thing, will be an audiobook on Audible. So go buy it. I think by this time. Also, just if you really love me, and you've never done Audible and you never plan to do Audible, if you do it for the first time and you choose my book, I think I get like some bounty money, like $50 or something.
Oh.
So if you never want to do Audible, just go do me a solid and go buy it, and I'll get $50 and I'll spend it on food.
That's awesome.
Spend
There
it
you
on
go.
food.
It's
some weird thing,
I am Bob Rose. My Twitter handle is @ThunderGruntBob, and I'm going to try to convince Jamie to buy me lunch once he gets that hot money.
Absolutely. If I get a bounty.
Right.
This is episode 50, by the way.
Yeah, happy 50th anniversary,
50.
guys.
Just peek the audio there.
Probably. We made it to 50, and for 50, we chose, I think, the movie, right?
Yes.
A movie we've
Yeah.
all talked about doing.
Yeah.
A movie that with a script that I think both of you have said you use as like here's a monument for your students to look at. You know?
Yes.
Here's where you look.
Yes.
Back
I'm
to the Future.
Constantly sending clients to
Back-
various moments of this movie. Absolutely.
Yeah, this is
Using it as examples, top to bottom.
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
Right. Written by
Oh, it's not Back to the Future 2? I watched the wrong movie. No.
Well, just try to keep up with us. Anyway, who wrote Back to the Future, Jamie? Not that we don't know.
Back to the Future 2. No,
I think it's the same. It's the same writers, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I think
they brought on David Goyer, I think. in the
Oh,
second one.
Jesus.
So I don't know why.
God damn.
No offense to David Goyer.
No, some actually.
So Back to the Future was written by Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale.
Both the Bobs.
Both the Bobs.
Yeah.
And this movie, I'm scrolling down to IMDb because I'm thinking it was coming off of, there's a long development history with this movie.
Mhm.
I think they wrote it early, like after Used Cars, like somewhere
Mhm.
around that time
Yep.
frame.
A great movie.
There you go.
I love used cars.
Still
Another one I
haven't seen
use
it.
as a model in some ways, just because
You serious?
in a different way, more conceptually. I use
yeah,
a lot of it's used cars with blank. I remember
Gotcha.
my early screenwriting
Your students
career.
can't know what used cars is.
I don't use it to them.
Oh.
Back in the
I was gonna say.
it's more the old screenwriters like
Yeah.
me. But there was a
Yeah.
time when I was constantly trying to make my own used cars, but it would be something else.
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, you should probably watch used cars because it's like got that. It's like that almost late 70s stunt movie esque, but it's an 80s movie with
Right.
Robert
Okay.
Zemeckis and Kurt Russell.
Kurt Russell.
Anyway, go ahead.
Two competing used car lots, basically.
Nice.
It's a
across
sleazy
the
movie.
street.
Yeah.
Sleazy, yeah.
So anyway, used cars, they were coming off of that. They wrote the screenplay. I don't think anybody was. I think it had money that somebody was developing at Columbia or something.
Nobody wanted it.
Nobody
nobody
really wanted to
wanted
make it. But then Robert Zemeckis did Romancing the Stone, another one of my favorite movies.
And I feel like we should do that at some
Yeah.
point.
I think we're definitely gonna get to that.
Yeah.
At some point.
And another movie that I use, I was always trying to rip off and find my own Romancing the Stone. I've never tried to rip off Back to the Future as much, but I probably have in execution. So Back to the Future was bouncing around. I think he was friends with Spielberg, who produced Used Cars. But I don't think Spielberg wanted to be attached after Used Cars or something. And then
Interesting.
That's not his style. That movie's really sleazy. It's like almost a Police Academy type movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's just a
and I
sleazy
don't
movie.
think it did very well. I think it was
No,
a bomb.
it didn't. No.
So ultimately, I knew there was a whole thing, and there are many drafts, and we'll talk about some of those. Ultimately, I think there was a whole thing I read about where they did a trade with Universal. Columbia Pictures, they had the rights to Back to the Future. Universal wanted to make it. Sid Sheinberg or whatever the guy's Sid Sheinberg.
Sheinberg, you're right.
Yeah,
Sheinberg.
He wanted to make it. He liked the script, and there was a double indemnity rights issue. Like Columbia wanted to make a remake of Double Indemnity called Big Trouble. And there was some kind of trade they did. They did a deal, and that's how Back to the Future ended up at Universal. I think this is something I read a long time ago. I'd have to look it back up. And there's
I've read all this. You're right.
There's a making of book for Back to the Future that I read
Pretty
a couple
sure
years
a lot
ago.
of this is on the Blu-ray extras too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm sure, where they get this stuff.
Right.
Anyway, so this is kind of the history of it. So it eventually got greenlit. I remember also, didn't they want to call it, they had an alternative title. I think it was like, the alternative title was actually Spacemen from Pluto. Like, that's what they were trying to force.
Because it was supposed to be named after George's book.
His book. Exactly.
Yeah, that was.
So, and they were like, Back to the Future, that title's horrible. Let's go with Spacemen from Pluto. Right. And that was the studio kind of enforcing
yeah, right,
that on.
right. Yeah.
Anyway, these are the things I remember. Let's get the box office.
Yeah.
I mean, and also, production-wise, the big one is that they shot for 6 weeks with Eric Stoltz.
Oh, yeah.
And then they reshot it.
And it wasn't funny.
Right. He didn't.
So...
As Zemeckis has always said, that footage will never be released because then people would use it as to say he was bad at acting. It's not Eric Stoltz's fault.
Yeah.
He was miscast.
At this point, Eric Stoltz could suffer the blow.
I bet he'd be cool with it. I think he would.
That's what I'm saying. He's had a fine career.
Although maybe it is a hurtful memory.
Maybe.
You know?
Yeah.
But everybody's seen the pictures. We all know. That's what
Zemeckis wanted a comedy. So he got a guy from a sitcom instead of a guy that was crying all the time. Yeah.
So 1985, this movie came out. It was the #1 movie in 1985 domestically.
Yeah. We knew that.
$190 million.
Wow. In 85.
In 85. So here are some.
That's a hit today.
Wow.
Here are some of the movies that just missed beating. Actually, they came kind of far away. Beverly Hills Cop.
Okay.
Was number 2 at $157 million. Rambo: First Blood Part 2 was at $150 million.
Jeez. Wow.
Rocky 4 was at 89. A good year for
Stallone.
Wow.
Man.
He was almost in Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah, right? yeah.
Tune into our Cobra episode.
All right.
Okay.
Should I do a Cobra episode? Good.
Cocoon at $76 million. I think one of my friends told me like he was kind of bummed out because we're getting to be the same age as Wilford Brimley in Cocoon. And it's like, wait a minute, what the hell's going on? I'm still a few years earlier.
Well, how old was he in Cocoon?
I think he was in his early 50s.
Okay.
In that. So I'm getting close to Wilford Brimley in Cocoon age.
Look how it turned out for him.
Yeah, exactly. And then Witness at $68 million, Goonies at $61 million.
What a year.
Another one we'll have to do one day.
Oh my gosh.
Police Academy 2 at $55.
My favorite Police Academy.
Fletch at $50 million at number 9, which I would have never thought that was number 9.
We could do Fletch at one point.
Yeah.
And A View to a Kill at $50 million at number 10. They're your top 10 movies of 1985.
How whenever we do an 80s movie and you read off of the top 10, we're always like, what a year. But really, we're all just saying we're old and we remember all these things fondly. Like, that's what we're saying.
Yeah. I guess we read last year, it's what a year to somebody, but you know.
Well, I'm saying that you could read any 80s top 10 and I'd be like, yes. You know what I mean? Like, that's going to be me.
That's true.
Right.
But it's kind of like to think that all those movies you saw in the same summer or something.
Yeah,
like that.
together.
It's kind of amazing.
The quality level and the originality.
Yeah. It was a busy summer. I saw a lot of movies.
But this is like Back to the Future was the biggest.
Yeah.
Yep, and it made $388 million worldwide.
That's like a hit today.
Yeah. In 85.
That's a big movie today.
Wow.
And this is counting
unless
inflation?
it's Solo, and then it's like
well, yeah. But Solo spent how much money?
Yeah.
$388 million.
Did it actually cost $300?
I think it probably cost close with the reshoots. It's undisclosed, but I think the reshoots drove it. It almost doubled the budget.
More than Speed 2.
Speed 2. Yeah, listen to our Speed 1 and 2 episode if you haven't for that hilarious tidbit. All right, let's jump in.
Yes.
Let's talk about the instructive lock-in.
Yeah,
of
so
Back to the Future.
Jamie, you want to describe the lock-in and we'll bounce off of it?
So the lock-in is one of my key simple concepts because you don't need a whole book to really understand it. You can just if you want to know story structure, this is kind of one of the things. So when we talk about log lines, and we've repeated this a few times, but I'll go over it again super quick. Log lines typically have a few, there are a few things that all log lines should have. They have a hero or a protagonist, I guess, with a goal. There's an obstacle in the way of that goal. And then there's some stakes that if they don't get the goal, some horrible thing will happen. You know, the world will end, whatever. So the lock-in tends to be a spot. It's kind of the point of no return in your story where all those things kind of cinch into place.
Yep.
So it's kind of like Marty McFly. He has to get back to the future or he will be stuck in time. So we're saving the stakes of his family being erased for later.
Yeah.
Because that's the raising of the stakes, but just the initial stakes of the movie. Marty McFly has to get back to the future or, he'll be stuck in the past. The obstacle is, time travel,
all the various
things like that.
things.
All the various things. And when that gets locked into place, what happen, would you say?
That is 31 minutes. So
31 minutes.
And we've talked about on the show.
What's
also
the perfect
is
lock-in time,
on
Jimmy?
in all the books.
In all the books.
That have their positives and negatives.
Right.
There's this stigma that the end of Act 1, the lock-in, has to happen 25% through your story, and lots of writers are really paranoid about making it happen.
Can't be page 24.
Exactly.
It has to be page 25.
They literally will be like, if it happens on page 26 of my 100-page screenplay, I'm fucked. People really get upset about this.
They take
and
the
get
creativity
concerned.
out of stuff, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
And so what we have, when we've been examining these various lock-ins in this movie, we're finding time and time again that is not true. That there's one, we're listing one great movie after another where the lock-in is later than 25%.
We're doing Rocky eventually.
Yes, which is a 50-minute lock-in.
Yeah.
This one is when he goes back to 1955, it's 31 minutes, which is 28% of the overall story. So there you go. See, it's a little later, but who cares? It earns all that before world setup. You have to set up so many things, and everything's a setup in the first act of this movie. So
yeah, and when I'm analyzing stories, usually that's like the first thing. I figure out where the lock-in is, and then I retroactively figure out some stuff based on that, like where the act breaks are and what things are. If it's slow burn, like some horror movies and stuff might not have a true lock-in to page 50. So lock-ins are really instructive to me when I'm kind of analyzing a script.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone listening at home, what's the lock-in in Back to the Future?
When he goes back to the
That's
past.
what you guys are talking about specifically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because then
I knew that. I'm just saying.
Then the overall.
Say it.
I always look for what clarifies and clearly defines the overall central story question.
Kind of a point of no return, right?
Oftentimes
first-
it's described that way.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's a new world. They're in a new
the
world.
upside down world.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not always, but most of the time.
Yeah, not
And
always.
What's funny about the goals in these two is a lot of times they are the title.
Yeah.
The goal
Back
is
to the
title.
Future, right?
Back to the
She
Future.
goes back.
I mean, even something like
You're saying in the lock-in
The
goals
Wizard of
that-
Oz
yeah.
is kind of what her goal is.
Yeah, that
in
is
some ways.
funny.
Yeah.
But there can a lot of times it is the title.
Yeah,
the goal.
and one of the
Not
things
always.
that
Ghostbusters when they first bust ghosts.
Hey.
hey,
Yeah.
but what there's two things that this can be used as sort of like a gauge for. A lot of times I'll run into scripts that don't have enough setup, and they rush into the lock-in like 15 minutes in, and then you start learning things about their character and like the things that need fixing and various things after they're locked into the story problem, and it doesn't land the way it should because we're more focused on other things. Or the other thing, and Jamie, you've talked about this, I think, with your students, you have this lock-in that doesn't happen until like midway through. The lock into the overall story problem happens way later than it should. So it's sort of like we're not
at
invested.
85 minutes.
It's like the movie. The reason that we came to see the movie doesn't begin until halfway through.
Just to give you a point, like imagine if this movie, if the lock-in didn't happen to minute 60 and you didn't know what it was about.
Right.
So a lot of times with a new
it would be like a
screenplay-
high school movie.
Yeah, you're like, what is this movie?
Yeah, what is
why,
it about?
Why
Right.
am I watching? What's
Right.
going to happen? And
Right.
then all of a sudden, this time travel thing happens on page 60.
On page 60,
kinda
we
what they
see a
feel like.
time
We
machine.
should at some point
yeah.
do From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We really should. Yeah,
Yeah,
for that kind of
because
thing.
it blends, it plays
Does
with
that,
those
yeah.
things. Yep.
Yeah.
Successfully.
Right.
But yeah, so this is
a
the
late lock-in.
prototypical lock-in. Will Marty get back to the future?
And it's
I mean,
ideal
it's
at
as
30
simple as
minutes, 25, 30 minutes. It's
that helps.
right.
But it
Right.
doesn't have to be that.
And there's some argument that people say it's oftentimes when the character makes a decision.
Right.
In this movie, it's kind of, I guess, his
when he makes
decision.
a mistake.
Yeah, it often
Yeah.
is that. I don't know that's always when a character makes a decision.
So I'm
Sometimes they're
saying
forced
in
it.
this, it's
In
a
this one.
mistake.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this one, he's just trying to get away.
Yeah.
So he has to.
Yeah, and
yeah.
he doesn't realize for sure that there's another 10 minutes before he realizes the problem he has to solve. But to
Yeah.
me, I think our superior position works so that we know the story problem he has to fix is
We're like,
will
well,
he get
we know
back
what
to
It's
this
the
not
movie
just
future?
is.
superior. I mean, Doc shows that it works.
Right.
We already know it
And
works.
that's a pivotal moment
Right.
in that. The
Einstein
scene is
yeah, yeah.
the Einstein moment is crucial
Right.
to give us context, because otherwise we'd be like, well, is it working? Is it going to work? Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned the 10 things that need fixing. Should we go into that now?
Yeah,
Yeah, if
the
you want
6
to.
things
Sure.
that fix.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll jump.
6 things.
We'll jump
yeah.
around.
Explain
yeah.
also what that means.
Okay. So yeah.
Because they're gonna think we're trying to fix
so,
Back to the
okay,
Future.
this is taken directly from Blake
Yeah,
Snyder's Save the Cat.
This is a Save the Cat notion.
Which book?
It's the first book.
the first book.
Not the best
well,
one. The third
it's-
one.
Yeah, that's right.
But this is a
It's
movie
in all
that
of them.
follows Save the Cat to a T. I mean,
Right,
it's
right.
worth talking about.
Well,
Okay.
I'll get to one point that I always worry about.
oh, nice! I can't
Okay.
wait.
Yeah.
But so there's basically Blake poses that in prototypical in like arc plot movies, a first act of a movie will be used to set up all the things that need fixing in the world of the character that is going to be explored for the rest of the second and third act.
Tell people what an arc plot movie is.
Ooh.
Oh, arc plot is just meant like your classic structure movie. Heroes have goals, obstacles, and stakes. Things are setups and payoffs. They're mostly just by way of example. They're most of the movies you see. So Pixar movies, superhero movies.
We call them cheeseburgers on this
Cheeseburgers.
podcast.
If you're making an experimental film, the Lynches of the world, these things don't
apply.
Right,
don't apply.
yeah.
If that's what your
Or-
goal
or a
is
more
as a
Sundance
writer,
a more Sundance movie that
this
kind
doesn't
of
apply to you.
feels like real life might be a
Yeah.
little different. It might take pieces of it, but not use all of it.
Right, but audience
We're
expectations.
talking about blockbusters, and that's
Right.
usually what an arc plot is.
That's
But
right.
audience expectations based on these types of movies, the
Mhm.
stories need to do these
They're
things.
kind of
things.
closed loops.
Right,
Yeah.
closed loops. So these are the loops they're creating.
That's
There's all
right.
the things that need fixing, and they typically fall into 5 categories: changes in attractiveness or personality, strained personal relationships, not being trusted with responsibility or not able to handle responsibility, being invisible to key people, others don't believe in you, or you've given up on yourself. And the reason that I wanted to bring this up is because that doesn't describe Marty. That describes George. So
Yep.
it's very interesting. And the things that need fixing are technically George's problems, basically. Marty's world around him has many things that need
Well,
fixing.
that
but it's
brings us
all,
to the next point,
yeah.
right?
Which makes this an interesting movie because, like you said, to the next point, George has the big arc, and the arc is almost Marty's goal for most of the movie.
to make another
change
character's
George.
change, right?
Yeah, I think the only other movie that I really see where the arc is this integrated into the plot, or one of the movies, it's not the only one, is Groundhog Day is very much that way.
Mhm.
Because it kind of becomes the arc almost is the plot. It's the goal. If he changes, he can get out.
Yep.
But in this movie, it's really interesting.
he's got to
that-
change
Yeah.
another person. Actually, almost 2 people, but he has to change
Yeah.
another person to get free
So-
of the underworld.
So,
or
so the
whatever,
one
right?
thing I was going to say, it's debatable whether Marty has an arc or not. He doesn't have much of one, but so here's the evidence to Marty's arc. He goes to that audition. He goes to the audition, and he comes out, and he won't send his tape in. He can't take rejection well.
Yeah.
And I think the theme that they keep hitting is, you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it, kind of thing.
Mhm.
But he seems like He's a slacker. They call him a slacker, but you don't
But
really
you don't
get to
see
feel.
the
You don't
slacking.
feel the
No.
slacker.
Yeah.
He feels pretty active, actually.
I know.
He feels
Yeah.
pretty active. He doesn't really feel like a slacker.
Yeah, I agree.
So you don't really buy it that he's a slacker.
yeah.
And he's pretty.
Because he's awesome.
He's pretty awesome and well rounded.
So
Yeah.
I assume we're arguing from a point of most people that analyze this movie think he doesn't have an arc.
Right.
That's what I've heard most. I know
Yes.
Jimmy,
I'm going to hit back.
you're gonna hit back, and let me hit back first if I had to. And tell me if this is an arc or not, but I always assume that his faith in his family and his father was his arc.
Yes. That's what I'm saying.
Like, he doesn't-
Well, not the phrased that way.
Sorry, yeah,
On
his
the same
respect and faith,
wavelength.
his respect.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
So
like he doesn't have, like, the beginning of the movie, he does
So
not
first-
respect his father.
the one exercise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The one exercise I always say, to do is, if we took the Marty from the end of the movie and put him in the beginning of the movie, would he be different?
I think so.
I think he'd have more
I think he would
confidence.
stand up to Biff in the very moment that he watches Biff and does nothing.
Yeah. Then he has an
Um,
arc. It's obvious that his father does.
Yeah.
But does Marty? Is he
Yeah.
different in the end? That if we just took his character,
I think
and
it's
put
a
him in,
great exercise.
would he?
I was gonna
It's
ask
small?
you, Jamie,
Small.
to
It's
do
small?
this.
No, it's small, but
No,
it's there.
So,
it's small,
so
but it's
I
there.
think on the one side of it, the arc of awesome, the agent of change for everyone else, the Forrest Gump, the Benjamin Button, is very apparent. He's changing everybody, in his
He being
actions.
Marty.
is
Marty,
changing
yeah.
everybody by his every action.
Yeah.
But I agree with. It's weird. Both of you are saying the exact same thing that I'm saying, but I'm just gonna say it differently.
Well, Jimmy, even though we're saying that, it still feels like external.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like,
I think it's internal.
feeling wise, though, it doesn't feel like Marty changes
So,
that much,
here's
except
my
for the
evidence.
respect for his father. That's
okay.
Yeah.
That's enough.
That's
It's
enough.
learns to. There's one of the arcs is learns to accept others' faults and flaws,
Okay.
which is sort of a respect thing, and that includes Marty's own, where he's like no longer feels like he's worthy of rejection. Like when he plays on the, he earns that playing in front of everyone. I'm never gonna get to play in front of everybody. In the beginning, he thinks his dad's a joke. It's very clear. He's ashamed of him. He's embarrassed by him. And then he gets context to his life, and he realizes, I'm very much like him. And then he learns about his ambitions to be a sci-fi writer, and that's like this moment, like, he's an artist, and he's just like
I didn't know
me.
you wrote anything.
I didn't know you're an artist, and you're scared that people will reject you. That's just like me. And all of a sudden, I think it's as simple as he learns to respect his father. Yeah, I think it's enough.
Also, they don't show it, but like Marty has his own bully, which is Principal Strickland.
yeah,
Right.
that's true. That's true. That's a good point.
And he sees his father has his own bully. So yeah.
So the draft, the 1984 draft, not the 1980 draft, which we might hit a little bit earlier. The 1984 draft, and this is the thing I went to look up, had more of an arc for Marty. It's the same script. It has the DeLorean and all that stuff. It's pretty similar. It has a couple more beats that I almost wonder they may have been shot. And they're small.
With Eric Stoltz.
They're small, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
We don't have any more money to reshoot.
there's a
that.
scene where he has like a tape he's going to send to the record company, and he stuffs it in a drawer or throws it in the trash or something before all the stuff happens. And then in the end, he pulls that tape out and he mails it.
Wow.
So it actually shows he learned confidence or whatever. It's a little.
That's informative.
Yeah.
That's
a story.
really
Why do you
significant.
think they cut it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a little on the nose. Maybe they just realized they didn't need it.
They didn't need it to give you the feeling
Yeah,
that he's
maybe it's
changed,
just
that
like
everything's better.
2 minutes of stuff
Yeah.
they could just cut out.
Yeah,
and
makes it
wouldn't matter.
faster.
Yep.
Get as soon as you're done, get out as fast as possible.
right.
Right?
And
Don't stick around. Yeah.
It's not. It's a little on the nose. It's not like
Yeah.
something we would have been like, oh, we
Amazing.
feel better.
Because it's almost like the performance at the concert being a success for his saving his life. His music literally saved his life is
Right.
enough.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
He
It's like
doesn't
we
need
don't
more.
need that. It
Yeah.
almost feels like a down step from the concert saving his life.
Right.
Like, what's this tape gonna do?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
wow, that's good.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
I know a lot about Back to the Future. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
Well,
some of the
it's in
stuff
the
I'm going to
script,
bring up
so-
about the old scripts is going to be like, what?
I mean, I know most of that stuff. but yeah.
Bob's like, shit.
I don't know all the words to describe everything, so you guys win anyway.
So I think we're all on the same page.
To some degree, I think
Yeah.
it's still light. I think that
It's light. I think it's light.
I think that Marty,
George is the one.
like I told you guys, I think the most famous person I've ever heard talk about this, not involved, was Dan Harmon, where he was just like, it's amazing.
That's a good person to hear talk about
right?
this
It's a
movie,
good person here, and he was like, it's amazing that to write a perfect movie with a main character who has no arc. So he was just straight up, Marty has no arc.
He was saying,
straight up. So
Okay.
I found that interesting.
The interesting thing about the respect aspect too, if you look at the origins of the script that I kind of skipped over, is I can't remember if it was Gale or Zemeckis, but they were looking at a yearbook of their father in the attic, and they saw that he was class president, and they never knew that or something.
Wow.
And then they wondered if they would be friends with him or hate because he hated the class president in his school.
That's the whiteboard right there, right?
Yeah. So they saw that, and that was the inspiration. The inspiration was more like, would I have been friends with my parents if I was their age back in the day?
Wow.
So that
It's
gets
weird
to
that,
the
like-
arc of
So
respect.
it's sort of like whether they were trying to or not, it's there.
That was the genesis.
Because
that
the
was
seed
the
was
seed
there.
of the idea
Yeah.
to do this movie.
Side note, it's also
That's
pretty
awesome,
funny.
Jamie. I didn't know that.
It's
Yeah.
funny that that's the origins of this movie, but I feel like in pop culture, it's always the sci-fi aspect of these movies that
Of
are,
course.
you know what I mean? But really,
But
it's
the beating heart, that's why it's...
what is Back to the Future
stood the
about?
test of
It's about
time.
meeting your parents in high school and
Yeah.
seeing what they're
and
like.
seeing that,
That's what the movie's about.
giving you emotional context to why they are the way
they are. Right.
The
Yeah.
one thing, I mean, this kind of goes away from the screenwriting side, but I remember when I saw this movie, it was weird. It was a weird movie because I was used to the sci-fi, the big boom, effects.
Right.
This had a little touch of that.
Yeah.
But then once it was in place, it was a movie about a guy in the 1950s. So my parents
Fish
liked
out of
it.
water. And
Fish
Man
out
at
of
a
water.
time. Yeah.
And it was more relationship. And I did get the fact that, his mom's saying Calvin Klein, and
yeah.
checking his underwear out and stuff. Like I got that as a, little kid or whatever when I was watching it. My parents liked it. My sisters liked it. Everybody got it. It was this true 4-quadrant experience.
Also,
what they call
it was like Zemeckis said, is like it was the perfect time to make the movie because if you go that far back for that kid's parents, you're at the one time period in American history where kids started to have their own culture.
Right.
Mhm.
right.
It was like the perfect moment to make this movie,
Now,
like
Yeah.
lightning in a bottle.
The
you
joke
know?
is if we made it now, it'll be 1990.
90, right?
Yeah.
And like 1990, I don't see the same like impact that the 50s.
Well,
had.
the world was so much the contrast in the worlds, but then the story
But
shows
imagine the
that
40s from the 50s. That's so
Yeah.
different, Like that's like a turning.
But I
point.
love that the contrast that once Marty digs in, the world is actually very similar, and the problems are all the same. You
Yeah,
know what
yeah.
I mean? We're shown dun, 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 dun. It's all
Right,
happy
right.
and everything, and it like seems like this dreamland,
Well,
and
and
then
also-
it becomes
It's
very
a writing
real.
thing to say that this movie is tongue in cheek to some degree.
It is.
Absolutely,
I think the whole
Yeah.
trilogy is tongue in cheek.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
point of it.
definitely.
Yeah, it's
It's
not
a
straight.
stylized world.
There's a
Yes.
tone argument in there somewhere.
Yeah, there
where-
is.
Yeah, it's
we didn't put it on the talking, but you're right.
like things constantly happen all the time in different eras. Like that's the point. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, we talk. Okay, so Marty's arc, we're all kind of in agreement.
Yeah.
George's arc is pretty easy to define.
Yeah. George, I wanted to talk less about his arc and more about the execution of his arc.
Yes, please.
So first of all, like, so the theme, are we saying it's if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything?
So, something I think about putting
I don't-
yourself out there. Is that
My question to you guys, because I don't have the answer, I'm just asking. Is,
I don't know if that's
it
actually the
seems,
theme.
Yeah, it seems
That's
like
not-
standing up for yourself and doing what's right in the
Yeah.
face of people
That's-
doing what's wrong is a huge. That's what George does to succeed.
It's kind of an overcoming your fears aspect.
Yeah.
In some ways.
Standing up for yourself.
I
It seems like standing up for yourself is a big repeating thing in the movie.
There also seems to be something else there that I'm trying to figure out. I never really thought about the theme of Back to
Yeah.
the
Well,
Future.
the one
So-
thing is, what's the one? Here's the one that I think would be instructive to tie in. Like all those things make sense for Marty. They make sense for the father. What's the thing that makes sense for Doc Brown?
That's exactly what I was going to
yeah,
say.
Yeah.
What's
What's
the one
Doc's
that loops him in too?
Doc and Marty's theme.
well, the line that's repeated by Jennifer to Marty and Marty to George is Doc's line. They got it from Doc, which was if you can put your mind, if you put your
right.
mind to it, you can accomplish anything. That's Doc's mantra, and then
Yeah.
other people are talking about that.
But I feel like the Doc and Marty, there's two movies almost.
Yeah.
The Doc and Marty movie is about friendship.
But then ultimately he
It's
chooses.
not about respect
he
or
says, "What
anything.
the hell?" In the end, he chooses to read the letter, and that's what saves his life.
And
So, what
there-
does that say?
There's a part of me that's like, what if and again, I didn't do
Stand
this
up
work,
for
so
yourself.
we're kind of doing this.
I
kind
kind
of
of figured I'd do this on the podcast.
Yeah, I was
yeah.
doing this
That's
on
what I
the
was sort of
fly.
waiting
So-
for. Yeah.
What's the position Doc Brown is in when Marty visits him in the past?
He's
Where
a
is he?
joke.
He's a joke.
He's a loser. Yeah.
What's his internal feeling? Sorry to
That
walk you
his
through this.
no, this is great.
No,
Yeah, I'm
That
trying to
his-
figure it
that
out.
his inventions aren't going to amount to anything.
And
That
how
all
does
of his purpose, he has no purpose. He even tells Marty, "You've given my life direction. You've given my life purpose. I'm gonna miss you."
Marty's like his savior.
yeah.
how does he do that? Does he just tell him he's going to do these great things in the future, so then he has faith, or is it
Well,
something
he tells him
else?
it works.
It
tells him
worked.
it works.
I invent something that finally,
Well,
he he learns that he's actually going to do it.
But
Yeah.
so I always look at the success of the characters and the action they take, and that tells me a lot. And the action that he takes, that's the moment of growth for Doc, is that he chooses to go against his own advice and read the letter because Marty says your life depends on it. So what does that say?
This has something to do with
Reading the letter is his action that saves him. That's his success moment for Doc. And that's the moment of change
there,
because he
like-
says, what the hell? That's like
Well,
his,
so,
yeah.
so
Like
here's
what-
where I
okay,
think
go
it's
ahead.
you can change your future kind of thing.
Yes.
You can be
You
the-
control your destiny.
You control
So
your
it's
destiny.
the Back to
not,
the Future 3 lesson? The
I
future's
don't
what you
know
make
it
it?
well enough to, but
Yeah.
I
Make
do,
it a good one?
The future
Yeah.
is not set.
the future is not set.
It's what you make
can
of it.
you can make your future. So
Yes.
you,
He basically says
so
that at 3.
you can do whatever you want,
Which is
if
an
you stand
extension
up.
of if
Yeah.
you put your mind
Put your
to it, you
mind
can
to it,
accomplish anything.
You can
yeah.
accomplish anything.
Yeah. So
There's
yeah.
something.
There's
in
something
that,
there.
in that mix.
I knew we weren't gonna land on anything because it's not overt. So
I feel like there's a
I'm-
friendship one in there somehow.
I'm enjoying
I
this.
feel like there's a friendship one.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something in there else.
My only reason why I don't know about the friendship, and I do think there's a strong friendship in many movies.
There's such an emotional core
I'm
at
not-
the end to that.
I'm not sure that they learn that here. It's
Yeah.
just in existence. That's why.
Well,
What
Doc-
you
the-
said though,
well,
that
Doc-
the future
Doc
is not
learns.
set and you control your destiny.
Mhm.
I mean, even like George's line, "I am your density." That
yeah.
seems to be like he can't even get that right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Doc,
I think-
but in the movie we watched, Doc becomes friends with Marty. Marty's already in love.
It's true.
Loves him already.
That's true.
right? I don't
That's
know.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. Like, it almost seems to me like Doc learns there's something more than his success with his inventions.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that's why he says, well, fuck it. There's something more important than science and like numbers and like, you're not supposed to do this, but I'm going to because I want to live and I
My
want to see
future, my life.
I want to see Marty again.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
Marty. He's my buddy.
Yeah.
Like, there's something there. I don't know how to put it in the words. of a
Standing up
theme.
for yourself.
Sure,
Mhm.
that's not
Yeah.
kind of, but yeah, in the face of oblivion, I guess.
Destiny.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I would argue their destiny is the main antagonist of this movie, trying to knock them all down.
Trying to knock. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like a Final Destination movie.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely. Yes, it is.
Yeah. Right.
That's-
Okay.
that's
So,
my-
how does
yeah.
that play into George's arc?
Okay, so basically, what I wanted to talk about with George's arc is this: we're constantly hearing in the writing circle about checking the story boxes versus cinematically earning the moments, right? Usually, the reason that something feels like a check the story box instead of an earned moment is because we don't get the in between. We get the setup and we get the payoff, and we don't get the growing pains in between. And this movie is an excellent teaching example of visualizing the growth, the spurts, and the regression. George has, I'll give examples. Okay, the first one is George is in action at the cafeteria when Biff is harassing Lorraine, which is like sort of a setup for the eventual payoff in the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Then Marty confronts him at his house and it like is like adamant, almost like shaking him, like, do it. And he says, "I'm not ready." So that's a second beat of growing pains. Third one is when he actually tries and he says, "I am your density."
Mhm.
Then Marty and George are actually practicing, "Get your damn hands off of her." And he says, "You make it look so easy." And he tells him how scared he is. So we're seeing another growing pains. George stares at the clock, and it almost feels like George isn't going to do it. Like when he's drinking, like by the punch bowl, and he's freaking out. It's like you almost feel like he's not going to do it because he's so scared. And then even when George confronts Biff and tells her to leave her alone, Biff overpowers him. So we get another moment of failure, another moment of trying and failing. And it isn't until he finally knocks him out. That's how many beats. And then we get more. We get a regression after that big climactic moment with Biff. Some guy comes in and takes Lorraine away, and he's like, okay. And so I just wanted to say that those are 8 moments of growing pains, and usually what you'll get is maybe 1. Imagine if you only had 1 of those moments. It wouldn't feel like
between him punching Biff and the beginning of the movie.
Between the beginning and him punching Biff, if you only got 1 of those moments, it wouldn't have the emotional resonance that it does. And it's just a great example of visualizing the change from beginning to ending of a character is basically what I was trying to say.
Also, this movie has that rare opportunity because of time travel to show that not only is he like this at the beginning of the movie, but this guy never... We already know going in superior position, right?
Right.
He never got better. Like,
no.
He's this guy his life.
So it's more dire.
It's dire, right? Yeah, we know like this is not just now. This is always.
Yeah. George's arc is like one of my favorite arcs of any movie. It's like the one I point to. So it's odd that he's not the main character. Right. Yeah.
Just because we don't follow him doesn't mean he's not the main character.
No,
right?
I get what you're saying. Yeah. Oh, it's one of those Red versus Andy Dufresne things.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah. Right. Okay, midpoints.
Yeah, midpoints. So this is one of the like classic midpoints in some ways. So where I hit the midpoint for this movie is when Marty goes to Doc and he finally convinces him, of everything, and he's like, "We don't have any plutonium here," and then he flips the back of the page, and it's a lightning bolt. So it's a victory of sorts.
Right. False victory.
Almost right next to that is when they find out that he's interacted with his family, and that's making his family.
It's the same scene.
It's the same scene.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the good news, bad news.
Mm-hmm.
I know the Blake Snyder books will say a false victory. This doesn't feel like a false victory because the victory's still there. It's just there's good news, but there's bad news. It works the same way.
Stakes raised.
Stakes raised.
It's the domino effect in this scene.
It resets the goal.
Yep.
So like before the goal was bigger, and now it's like, no, first you got to do this other thing that your existence depends on it. Your very existence.
So midpoint's a good place if you need to reset a goal. It's a good place to do it, and it's also a good place to start a ticking clock.
Yeah, and that's where we first see the photo. That's where we first see the photo disappearing. The in that scene.
Yeah. It's like one of I can't think of another one, a time travel movie to start a ticking clock that is so viable. It's really hard for time travel movies to do that, and this one found a way so early in our time travel movie life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because that lightning bolt, because they only will ever know one lightning bolt when it's coming. That's it.
10:04 p.m.
Right.
Yeah. It gives a specific and
it's such a hard thing to accomplish.
I know it doesn't feel contrived at all.
It doesn't, and it's so well done, and it's just so rare.
Yeah, and
there's never a why can't they do this in this movie?
It's another one of these great things. Like they do it's the thing I say about sitcom exposition. Make it a joke.
Mm-hmm.
So he's about to kiss his girlfriend, and then somebody shakes the thing in their face and stops the kiss, and it's like clock's out. It's kind of a throwaway thing, but it's actually setting up this huge important thing that's going to come into play.
It doesn't feel like we're being shoveled exposition.
Yeah,
exactly.
Not at all.
Yeah, that's a good point. The joke. Yeah.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's midpoints. Is that?
That's midpoints.
Oh, I thought you
still
had more.
That's good.
That's all you got.
Yeah.
Okay. Urgency, visualizing.
I mean,
that's kind of what we
talking
what
about.
we're just talking about.
I mean, I wanted to talk about how this movie doesn't. A movie about getting lightning to strike a giant clock. It doesn't rely on just clocks for its ticking clock mechanisms. It's a great example.
Chock full of clocks, though.
Yeah. No, and I didn't. It is. I mean, there's like 30 something.
It opens
in the
on
first
clocks.
scene.
Yeah. Right.
Specifically, I just wanted to talk about the 3 visualizations. So, like, when you have a ticking clock, I just got done a set of notes.
Which is a term. We're talking the term ticking clock.
Okay.
Right. In this movie, you have to
basically, here's how...
There's a lot of ticking clocks in the opening.
Yeah.
Here's how...
versus is it a save the cat ticking clock? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's
No,
just-
Save the Cat is not
Yeah, I don't know what they
not
talk
where
about.
ticking clock
They
mechanism
mention 'em,
came
but-
from.
Dude, you guys got all these
I
books.
know, we got the terms. It's
Yeah.
just a general writing term. It's
Okay.
basically you have
Bomb under the table.
You have a deadline to achieve the goal. Here's what it is: a character, and these can be used from scene to scene. It doesn't have to be one long one. It can be one for like half a scene even. You have a goal, and then you have a deadline, and then you have to count down to how long a character has to achieve that goal. It's as simple as that. And if you do not visualize the countdown, we feel no urgency. That's what it is. And I read script after script after script. I'll just give an example of a script I was working on yesterday. Has a fantastic deadline, right? And the stakes are clear. It's basically like the fate of a country is at risk, and there's something happens with a deadline that's been defined months from the beginning of the movie. And we hear about that deadline on page 9, and we aren't reminded how much time has passed for 70 plus pages. So we feel nothing. We don't have any idea how much time is left for the character to achieve their goal.
Right.
In this one, we're getting like various visualizations of the countdown, like maybe like one every couple minutes. I didn't track it, but like, and 3 of the examples of it doesn't have to be a clock is the disappearing photo, right? We're constantly shown the photo again and again, and people joke like, "Who carries a photo around with them?"
Their
family? But
family,
people
yeah,
have it
yeah.
on their phones now. What's the big
I'll never
deal?
forget in the video game that it was a photo that was disappearing as you had to go through
Yeah.
the level. Like,
Jesus, that video game is so hard.
It's horrible. It's awful. But I just remember them using that device in a video game. This is the ticking clock.
That's good.
Yeah.
So the disappearing photo is one way. Like we're constantly revisiting that photo, and we know that when all the people on the photo disappear, the time is up, right?
Yeah.
And the second one is Marty's hand while he's playing. That's Marty's hand is a ticking clock
This
mechanism.
now.
It's a
Happened
way to
now.
visualize the countdown. Oh shit, he's missing his hand.
Right. Yeah.
And then there's you can do it up too. So 88 miles per hour is a ticking clock mechanism. He's got to. It's a deadline of itself, and it's going up, and it's visual. Nothing needs to be said. So this is just a great example of how you don't need a clock to remind people that time is counting down to the deadline.
Even though this movie has a clock counting down.
It
to the
does.
deadline.
A
It's-
giant clock.
It actually has
Maybe
a clock counting down to when Marty needs to start the car, and a giant clock counting down to the.
Yeah.
It's there.
In a movie
so-
filled with clocks, the ticking clock mechanisms are not clocks.
Right.
Yes.
But they are some clocks.
There are some.
That's really the beauty of the lightning bolt too, is that you only get one shot at it.
Yep.
So there's
Tension,
one split second that
yeah,
they
yeah.
have to do it.
Yeah.
And he has something else he has to do that's life or death at the prom or whatever
Yeah.
the date. So anyway.
But what's great is they tell us we have when we find out at the midpoint there, they say we have 1 week to do this.
Mhm.
And then the story allows us to track as the days go by, as
Yeah.
we get closer. And that's what's important. We need to be reminded. It's Monday now. It's Tuesday now. It's Wednesday. These things matter. And that's how you feel like, oh shit, the pressure is mounting. And most of the scripts I read, this is like one of the most common things where we'll get a deadline and we won't be reminded of how much time has passed for like the whole script, or we'll get to the end and we'll learn that there was a deadline the whole time and everybody was acting about like urgent about it, but we never heard what that deadline was, so it was irrelevant. We're like, what's everybody rushing around for? There's something.
Yeah.
So
And the setup really helps with this because it's not just the lightning bolt. We've got the lightning bolt and the dance,
yeah,
and in the face of that, he's got the antagonist trying to ruin
right,
what he needs to do for the dance,
which slows that shit down.
slows that shit down
Yeah.
as another ticking clock
Yeah.
mechanism. It's like
Yeah.
it's like constant.
He gets put into the trunk.
Yeah.
These are various ways to
He's in a
alter
pressure
the clock.
cooker the
Yeah.
whole time
I
from
mean,
from the lock-in, right?
Mhm.
Like
And
that's-
even in the beginning, it plays with time with the ticking clock mechanisms when all the clocks are wrong, and that's like a great example.
Yeah.
The clocks are set behind, and he's 25 minutes later and he thought so. That's like a great example. The clock is wrong. Yeah.
Well, speaking of slowing shit down, I'm really happy that we talked about this beforehand. Let's talk about the villain. Because I was saying in our Joker episode, we started that with Jimmy's giant list of rooting
This
influencers.
one's not as big of a
no, but
book report.
you called it rooting influencers.
Okay, so yeah, I went to this. Do you want to keep going?
Well,
with
no,
what
I
you're
was just saying, like, Can we do? It's amazing that you made a list because I was like, we should do an opposite list of rooting influencers for Biff.
Yeah.
Because they set him up like one after another of why
like
this guy
instead
is.
of save the cat, kick the cat.
Yeah.
Kick the cat.
Kick the cat.
It's that's so.
It's so
There you
perfect.
And
that's why Jamie makes the big bucks.
How to
There's
craft
movies
a
that
villain,
kick the cat.
Yeah, kick the cat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even though I don't want to see cats getting
Don't
kicked.
kick a cat for real, please. Thank you.
But okay, so I went to. I've
Jamie's
talked
not
about
endorsing
this.
that.
Unless it's the movie Cats, then you can kick.
They
the
kick
cat.
it as much as you
Oh my
want.
god. So I've talked about this in other episodes, but for those of you who haven't heard them, the greatest seminar I ever went to, and it was a finite amount of time that this guy, and there's no
Tony
materials
Robbins.
online. Tony Robbins changed my life, man.
Nothing to do with scripts, but I feel great.
He had a seminar called Beyond Structure, and in it, he's super protective of his material. So David S. Freeman, I'm quoting you here. You're
He's
awesome.
gonna hunt you down.
I'm like so paranoid when I do this.
All the money we're making from this podcast.
Yeah, all the
He'll get
money
so
we're making.
mad.
It's his ideas. He says that he has this list of rooting influencers, and these are things that we watch that you front load. You can keep them going for the whole movie, but you front load them. That's the main goal. Is as soon as we meet these characters, you pile these on so that we feel like empathy towards characters and like we invest in them. And you can do the same thing with villains, except you can downtick them. Sometimes you can keep the uptick, like we talked about in Die Hard. He's got style. He's smart. These are the same things that make you root for heroes, but you give them to villains.
I mean, Marty has a few of these, right?
Marty has a shit ton
Yeah,
of
he has
these.
a bunch of
I can
these,
make
right.
I'm sure there's 30 or 40
a lot of them are
them.
sympathy based, but
yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure you can
Right.
pick 30 or 40 for Marty over the
right.
course of the story
Yeah.
because they keep going.
Yeah.
But with Biff, it's all downticks. So like what I'm gonna do is describe the rooting influencer that's the positive, and we'll talk about how it's the negative. Okay. The character is an everyman or every woman or an underdog. Biff like thinks he's better than everyone, right?
He's also
like,
bigger than most
he's
people.
bigger, right? Physically imposing.
physically
Yeah.
imposing, bigger.
That's a
Yeah.
good one. A character is authentic and warm. I mean,
Yeah, done. Right,
dude. He
right.
couldn't be more heartless.
Yeah.
A character takes responsibility for their mistakes. I mean, the very first time we meet him, he scratched George's car and then says, "You blames it on George." A character does a good deed for someone else. I mean, we see him doing morally wrong things over and over again.
To kids.
The kids is on
Oh,
here.
it's on there? Oh, okay.
Maternal or paternal towards kids. He's shitty to like all the kids that he encounters. That's a kick the cat thing, Jamie, right? Another character says something sympathetic about them. Everybody who's talking about Biff is talking about him like they hate him or they're scared of him.
Right.
The character is funny, witty, or clever. He's funny because he's not clever and thinks he is.
Right. It's actually like straight up specific.
Yes.
Like he can't even get like idioms right. Right. Yeah. It's like it's just perfectly anti
That's
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
A character solves their own problems. We're constantly seeing him getting people to do things for him instead of him doing them himself.
He's got lackeys.
Yeah. So those are the ones that's 10.
And what that does is it makes you root for this character to get a comeuppance.
Right.
Whereas in the other ones, we root for them to get their just rewards.
Right.
And this character, we want to see him fall on his face. So
it's
that's really what it does. It's a lot like wrestling, I think.
Yeah.
Like when you set up a heel character, you want to see them go down.
Right.
You don't want to see them win.
Yeah.
You want to see the good guy, the scrappy good guy win.
the underdog. Yep. Yeah. So we've I think this is like the 5th episode we've used them, and they just like fall right in line. They're always instructive, and they show, especially the Joker one. There was like 20 plus in the first 20 pages. So
I mean, there's also a lot of more specific ones too.
yeah.
I mean, how he treats women,
Yeah.
like really obvious stuff.
You mean Biff?
Biff? Yeah.
Yeah.
Biff? Yeah. No, not Marty. Biff. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a
Yeah.
really good one. I'm
But
glad you brought that up.
Well, it just like feels like Biff is like in a movie like this to have a villain that's so defined of being
Yeah.
just a piece of shit down the line on every check mark. It's just like perfect. All right, let's hyper skip. I'm just kidding, guys.
That's our new.
That's our new phrase. Rise of Skywalker, hyper skip. The lightning experiment. George and Lorraine's kiss. Visualizing goals. We kind of covered that. You sort of covered
pretty
that.
covered it, but I just wanted this scene, the lightning experiment scene. Jamie originally thought I was talking about some mysterious screenwriting exercise.
Yeah, I was like, what's the lightning? We write a bunch of ideas on the board as fast
as possible.
Lightning exercise.
Yeah.
Shit, man.
That might actually work,
that's
though.
A great label.
Yeah, that might actually work.
But and I want to get your comments on this too. I don't want to just be barking. This is the scene, the lightning experiment scene after the midpoint. That's why
with
I
the
wanted
model,
with the model,
the miniature,
where you have the miniature,
right,
and you have the model of the car, and Doc.
If we didn't say that, I would have been confused too. I just want you to know.
I'm
Jamie.
sorry.
Yeah.
And Doc basically says, here is what the plan is, and here is how we're going to do it. And he sets the car down, and the lightning strikes, and the car goes on fire. That is, for me, just like the lock-in is prototypical. That, it to me, is like the perfect visualization of the objectives at hand. And I always tell my clients,
and
like,
it shows the stakes because the car blows
yeah,
up.
the car
catches on fire,
yeah.
right? Yeah,
because a lot of people complain like, well, I knew what the ending was going to be, and my argument always is,
who's complaining about Back to the Future?
No, I'm saying like in situations like this, like there's a place for telegraphing.
Yeah,
it's you want to show, bless you,
insight.
You want to show people what the end looks like. The craft comes in making surprises for the duration to the path getting there, right? And this movie, like, imagine if you didn't see that. If that model scene isn't there, you're like confused about that last scene.
Well, it's kind of a 5-point finale thing.
Yeah.
There's the one thing where they suit up in the beginning, the gathering of the team. And I think of, like, when you were talking about Star Wars, the first Star Wars, A New Hope, when they're saying the Death Star is here,
It's
and here's
exactly
the model
that.
and this and that.
Yeah.
And yes, spoiler alert, the Death Star blows up in the end.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make it a lesser movie because
Right.
it was predicted in the
visualization of the goal.
Yeah, it's how we get there. In fact, it gives tension because we see all the things they have to do to get
Exactly.
there. And then when they start going wrong, we know that they're going wrong. Otherwise, we wouldn't know they're going wrong. We don't know
Exactly. How do you know it's going wrong if you aren't shown what victory
But
looks
there are
like?
movies that don't follow this.
And they work.
Yeah. for
I
sure.
think Ghostbusters doesn't really follow that rule.
No.
Yeah,
They
not
just
at
climb
all.
to the top.
They,
and
Yeah,
they
figure
don't
it
know.
out.
They don't know
No.
what's going on. We don't know what's going on.
But
we just go with
I
it.
think there's value if you're telling an arc plot story.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what genre it is. It can be like a
I'm
family
not trying to discount
drama.
it. I'm not
It can be a
discounting it.
comedy.
No, you're right. I mean, it's not. in every
It's
movie.
not.
Yeah.
This isn't the rule or
Yeah,
anything.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just saying it's a very helpful and instructive thing, like to ask yourself, what is my version of this scene? And is it in my script? Am I clarifying for the audience what victory looks like and how victory they're going to try to achieve it?
Yeah.
Like you said, Jamie, that's perfectly put. Like, how do we know it's going wrong if we aren't shown what it's supposed to look like to get it right?
I have an affinity for these scenes. I love models, but I usually have, like, in my screenplays, it's Legos or toys or
Right,
cardboard
yeah,
boxes.
Yeah.
I tend to write these
I feel
scenes
like
a lot.
Deadpool did this.
There's a
Deadpool
million.
2
There's
did
a
really-
million
But
examples of
Deadpool
this.
2 did a meta version of this,
Ah.
where they showed the map and like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and we have seen that scene over, but like your job is to make it fresh. I mean, you still can do it and make it fresh,
right.
which is the meta version of it. But and the kiss is another example of just like clean, easy storytelling. Like that's another major goal for Marty. And like, how do you visualize like the kiss? That's all we need to see. Nothing needs to be said. He doesn't even need to say, I need to get them to kiss.
Yeah.
Like we know, like it's romance. It's like if we see them kiss, and this is like another example where like I'll have clients who are like explaining away the kiss. Like, I need to get this relationship to reach this thing and blah, 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 blah. And instead, they just need to come up with something that is the peak of that shows us.
Right.
And nothing needs to be said to make it hokey.
Would this count as visualizing goals, the picture? Because
The picture is another
Yeah.
goal.
Well, I'm saying
Absolutely.
the-
restoring the family.
yeah, like the picture saying, "Here's what's happening," and and what you
Absolutely.
obviously want is this picture
Nothing
to be
needs
restored,
to be said.
right? I mean,
it's
that's
so clean. Nothing
it's so
needs
clean.
to be said.
It's just like once
and that's what I'm
back,
saying.
yeah.
Like it's very. This movie is very instructive in finding ways to visualize goals, while the model scene is over explaining the other things need nothing to be said.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so in a nice tight package.
yeah. Oh man, it's clean.
It's so clean. Do we really cover all is
I
lost?
feel like we did.
Oh, that's the
we
thing.
didn't. Yeah.
So that's the thing. I don't know what the all is lost. I've analyzed this movie over the years, stared at it, thought about it. And I'm not exactly sure what the all is lost moment
if you
is.
had to guess.
So let me describe the all is lost.
Yeah, go
moment.
for
do
it.
that.
Super
Do that
quick. I
first.
did
yeah.
it in the last
Yeah.
episode, which was 10 minutes ago. But, so all is lost.
Don't give our secrets up.
That is the label. All is lost is a Blake Snyder label. You'll see it in lots of books and theories, but it's the point in the movie. It's usually about the 75% mark where the worst possible thing happens. Something goes wrong in a horrible way, and it usually has a whiff of death, is what he calls it.
Mhm.
A lot of times a character dies there. Somebody important to them will be kidnapped. They'll lose in a romance movie, they might break up there. That might be the big breakup where they have a blow up. And then the immediate scene that follows it is the dark night of the soul. It's often when they kind of go into this, the almost like self-doubt state, or they have this moment where they have to reflect or feel bad about themselves or something before new information comes, and then we go to Act 3. So in this movie, the reason I always have trouble with it is because there is an all is lost moment. And I have a couple theories of possibilities. I don't know what the Dark Night of the Soul. It doesn't take the time for the Dark Night of the Soul to
Yeah.
follow, and that's usually the purpose of the All Is Lost, is kind of to trigger that,
Yeah.
and then get over that and go to the finale. This movie doesn't really take the time to do that as
It's
much.
paced weird.
It's paced weird, and there's a couple key moments.
Yeah.
So here are my theories, and I'll
Yeah.
let you think about them.
I've already got two I can think of, but I
So-
want to hear yours.
So one is honestly when it starts to go bad in the car, like to me,
Mhm.
that feels like the type of thing that's a Dark Night of the Soul. But I'm sorry, All Is Lost. But there really is no Dark Night.
That
of
would have
the
been my
Soul.
first answer.
Mhm.
Yeah, but honestly,
Yeah.
that feels to me like the worst thing could happen. It feels
Mhm.
like the plan is screwed.
Yeah.
Because
Because that's the goal.
It's the only
His
thing left.
existence
One
is-
chance, and
yeah.
like
Right.
is resting on
Right.
this.
Yeah.
So
And he's
that's
locked
one.
in the trunk.
I-
I think the all is lost is locked in the trunk.
I've heard. So that's the one I pick. Right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And you
But
could
you're
almost
asking about the Dark Night of the Soul.
yeah,
part of it.
yeah. So then I guess it's him playing the music or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's kind of
because
this weird.
it's like I did it and it still isn't working. I'm disappearing. No?
no, you're right. No, I'm
Yeah.
saying I'm agreeing with you. Yeah,
I think I've heard it argued, and this is the one that never made sense. I think there's a video online. I remember I used to show videos of Save the Cat to my students. They analyze them with clips of the movies, so they're more fun to
More fun. Yeah, yeah.
And I remember there was one I used to like cringe every time I saw it.
Oh.
But what it was it said the All Is Lost was like Doc Brown getting the note from Marty or something.
Jesus.
Yeah, like and I was
That's-
like, how could that
that's-
possibly be the All Is
no.
Lost? That's
Maybe
the one.
for
That's the one problem with using
I'd
video
almost say-
samples on the internet.
I'd almost like them more to even say like it was Marty writing the note.
Yeah.
That was dark because that's
Yeah.
like one of the darkest moments for Marty as a character, where he doesn't have hope that it'll actually work.
it's got to be locked in the
It's-
trunk because and like you said, things going wrong at the car because the whole his
But
whole existence.
the execution of that though doesn't feel like that.
I get
you know,
what you're
at
saying.
all.
It doesn't line
yeah.
up with the
It's
way
also it's played for laughs.
him locked in the trunk.
Yeah,
but,
like-
but it's cut. But it's intercut with a scene that's not played for
Right.
laughs
True,
at all.
right, true.
The darkest scene in the movie. So like with
even
like
Biff's
Biff
not
is gonna,
funny anymore.
Yeah,
No,
no, Biff
Biff,
is
you know,
gonna.
no.
Yeah. So like,
Yeah,
I think you're right.
it's weird because in most,
But it's not clear.
It's not clean
clear.
like
Yeah,
everything else
everything
is.
else
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
okay. It doesn't
have to. Be.
doesn't take away from the movie. That
No,
it's
not at all.
no, not at all.
No.
I love
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite movies. So it's just interesting that
Yeah.
it's the one where most movies do have clear All Is Lost. That's
Yeah.
the one thing that's almost rock solid in most
Yeah.
movies.
And
It's
I
very few movies that don't have a clear All Is Lost.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting to
Midpoints,
your point?
break-intos, other things.
Usually with the Dark Night of the Soul, you get the confessional.
Yes.
And this movie doesn't have a
And
confessional.
it might be because he
What's the
doesn't arc.
confessional? So people
That's
know.
where the character admits their flaws.
You're like, I should have never done this.
And that they accept
If
responsibility
I, John
for the way
McClane, had
they've
never
behaved.
never done this,
Everybody would have lived on the roof. God. Please listen to our Die Hard
Running
episode.
joke.
Oh man.
Oh,
God.
so
Jamie really is gonna bring
I
that
know.
into every
So-
episode. We're
so-
just gonna be
God.
waiting for it.
so if
Yeah.
there's
Yeah. So
there's
so it's
no-
interesting. There's no confessional.
and maybe because he doesn't really arc,
Yeah.
it kind of goes to that.
Yeah.
because it would almost
he like
be
skips past
You
that.
could almost look at what is his father's all his lost moment.
Yeah.
Does he have an all his lost moment? Does he recover? And
When his arm is being twisted by
Yeah,
Biff.
I think it
Could
happens
be.
fast. It's
Yeah.
all fast.
It's all when
yeah.
Biff has the upper hand,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
he gets the courage, right?
Yeah.
and B stories.
I feel like
they
writing the
usually
note
don't be-
comes somewhere in there. I don't know
That's
why.
true.
The writing the note to me feels like it has something to do with what you're saying.
Yeah, because usually that is where mentors go to die, as they all
Yeah.
lost. So I'm sure they saw that, and like, this is a whiff of death. It's nobody wants Doc Brown to die. This is really sad. This must be the all is lost, but it doesn't really function that way.
Yeah, you're
But
right.
again, the car scene, like here, I'm not saying this would be a better movie at all, but the way a typical all is lost would work is like, let's say Marty got locked in the trunk, and then Biff ran off with
Lorraine.
and then the third act was, I gotta save,
Yeah.
and then he figures out where they are
Yeah.
after he talks to George, and they
Yeah.
go off. And
Where'd they go?
It'd be something like that. It would
Or
be
are you
more
saying like he'd have to
stretched
choose between going back and saving
out.
his?
It could be, or
something
Because he doesn't really need to make that choice in, this,
Yeah.
in the movie.
No,
as
not
is.
at all.
Or-
Yeah.
or-
It just works out.
or
Yeah.
he feels like he needs to make that choice, but
Yeah.
then a third option presents itself.
Right.
And he's like, I'm going to do it, and that's
Right.
Act 3.
Yeah.
That's how a typical movie would.
Biff
would
can shoot
parse
force
these out.
lightning, and then
Yeah.
right. Yeah, right.
Anyway, the All Is Lost is one that's always made me think about this movie. I'm not sure that has a perfect example of one, and that's why, like, if I was presenting a Blake Snyder beat sheet, I'm not sure that I'd choose this movie to present.
Yeah.
because of that
Because
reason.
of that. Yeah.
It wouldn't.
I would
be
have said the
perfect
car.
one.
That's what I
Yeah.
would have said.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm
The
with
trunk
you.
that makes sense though too.
That's the one.
It's
that
just the trunk
feels like it.
execution to me doesn't.
Feels comedic before it hits the
Yeah,
darkness.
yeah, it doesn't feel right, whereas-
yeah. I got you.
Whereas like
Yeah.
that moment, while it feels more mechanical,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
pun intended, but it feels more mechanical, like execution wise. It just feels like, okay, now what? Like there's nothing. You can't miss this. Like
Yeah.
it's one
It's
shot.
so it's a
Yeah,
little
right.
different. And that's what's interesting about this movie being so good and doing things a little different. Yeah.
Sure, works fine.
Yeah, yeah.
Works fine.
The one thing I wrote on here, which we do not need to go through if you really guys don't want to, I just wrote this movie has an awesome whiteboard for both time travel
Mhm.
and for meeting your parents.
Mhm.
Like it just goes down the list.
And you got to imagine that, like we've talked about in the past, that initial whiteboard probably led to the things that go in part 2 and 3.
Yes.
You know?
And if for anyone listening, what is a whiteboard, guys? It's an idea board for a premise,
It's-
right?
It's basically a list of ideas.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, that's what we
Yeah.
we call it.
we
whiteboard.
call it
call it a
our
whiteboard.
whiteboard is our idea making process based on the premise.
You don't have to have a whiteboard though. You can
Yeah,
use
it could be
your-
It's basically
newspaper,
like
napkin.
for this it would be like
note
okay.
cards,
yeah.
an app on your phone. Yeah.
For this it would be like I want to make a movie where I meet my parents in the 50s
In the
high
50s.
school.
Yeah.
What do I want to see?
What
Then you
would
write down
happen?
everything
Yeah.
that could possibly happen. You know,
Yep.
I get hit on by my mom.
And you just keep
Right.
going.
Yeah. Right. I meet my
Yeah.
uncles. I meet my family. Yeah. Right.
Characters based on that question. Set pieces based on that question.
Right. I get to see how my neighborhood changed, where the people
Mhm.
were where they were then, where they were now.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. All that stuff. But I think the biggest thing we got left is the original draft versus.
Yeah.
draft
So
that
Jamie
we know
brought
and
it up
love.
first, and I'm glad I didn't even have that
and it's
one
something
on my
we don't
list.
normally do.
Yeah,
really.
we like Jamie, like Bob. You said that we treat the final movie like the script.
Scripts, right?
But
And and the draft I had was actually the '84 draft. So that was probably their shooting.
Pretty
draft.
close.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
probably really close to the shooting.
so there's a woman named H.R. DaCosta. She has a great site called Scribe Meets World. And she had actually snippets from the script, which was awesome. I didn't take the snippets, but like from the 1981 draft.
Yeah.
And I think it's very instructive to see where things started and where things ended and how like the power
So
of
different.
rewriting so different. And
Oh my
Bob, you
God.
probably know all this.
I'm like, you wrote it down though, so I'm gonna
yeah,
let you
let's
go
see.
for it. Yeah.
And it's just goes to show you they wrote this script for 4 years minimum. maybe longer than I don't know the full gestation period, but at least 4 years. This draft is 1981 that I'm quoting.
There's no way this could have the great ticking clocks in it.
It's got I'm only doing like a half dozen.
Okay.
Her article, she has 2 articles, and it's like 20 something things that are different, and like the choices made and why they made them and what they say about storytelling. So the opening scene. Do you know this, Bob?
Go ahead.
The original opening scene. The original opening scene was Marty in his house making VHS bootlegs of movies, and so he's like kind of a thief in that time. Like people, it's become normalized now, but it wasn't normalized.
He's a
then.
pirate.
He's a pirate.
He's a pirate.
And then Doc is trying to harness the power of the sun and has like a page-long monologue about the future of solar power. So I mean, you think about the contrast and now, like almost nothing is said, and like the visual. I mean, the opening scene is
now Doc has a reveal himself. He's like a twist in the beginning act. It's like totally different.
Well, just that opening page is like so interesting and weird and awesome. Like the clocks, the plutonium on the TV, the skateboard rolling in, all that shit is.
It's kind of like if they made a movie. You know how they made Mac and Me because of E.T.? That draft is the Mac and Me of Back to the Future. You know what I mean? That's what it is. Yeah. Man. Weird comparisons.
The Time Machine introduction. I'm sure you know this one, Bob. It's inside Doc's house.
Yep.
And it's an old furnace and hot water heater cobbled together, which is like very visually uninteresting.
Mm-hmm.
And it shoots red beams of light at his monkey Sherman.
Einstein's a monkey.
Yeah.
And named Sherman, right.
And it doesn't move.
No.
It just sits still like in a closet, like in his lab. It's even hidden in a closet, and it's introduced with just a red beam of light.
It's like more like a Star Trek teleporter type of a deal.
Think about the difference in those things and how just even making it mobile changes like the everything.
Yeah.
The end of Act 1, the 1981 version, Doc is putting the instructions into the water heater, which is just crazy to say. To take Einstein or Sherman, the monkey, back again, because he does that same scene exists with the 1 minute. Look, Sherman went back.
Yeah,
and the FBI comes in, not the Libyans, and the FBI shoots
that part. I remember.
Yeah, and the FBI shoots Doc. It's all in his house though. Inside, and then
it's
Marty.
Just so much darker. The FBI shooting him for some reason feels way darker.
It's darker. It's not dynamic. It's like way less interesting.
It's weird what a stroke of genius the DeLorean was.
Changes it all.
Well, because it makes it cool too.
It makes it cool,
fun.
The driving, the get there, all that stuff, and it's not an obvious thing. Like it's not something you'd whiteboard necessarily.
Right.
If you said, "I'm making a time travel movie," you wouldn't come up with DeLorean.
You can see how they got that draft. They were probably thinking of the Time Machine.
Sure.
The movie, The Time Machine.
And
it's a stationary thing that you sit in.
What's our version of it?
And let's not forget, the first commercials for this movie had the Time Machine in them.
That's
from
a good
the Time
point.
Machine. And Marty was sitting in it. Yeah.
And the inspiration for this, is, again, it was more about when I meet my parents, would I like them? So they're not worried about
the
DeLoreans
interpersonal drama.
They were trying to get the other stuff first.
Not the cinematic tech
stuff. It
stuff.
could have been a cardboard box.
Right.
It wouldn't,
But the problem
But you watch
and
those
making
scenes
that,
and you're like, that scene is so well directed. Of all the car movements and stuff and
it's
the
like,
shots.
how it did not
like
start
how did that?
like
Yeah,
that.
like how did
it wasn't
you not
born
do
from that?
Yeah, it's so
it
cool.
feels like that's the idea.
Yeah, right.
Right.
I almost want to know how they came up with that. Like, what was it? Or,
the
I'm
notes.
sure Bob Gale
I want to
has
hear
said
the
it.
notes. Who made the notes? Like, was it Bob Gale to Bob Zemeckis or Bob Zemeckis to Bob Gale? Was it like some? I want to know. Yeah, I'm fascinated by that choice.
Like how that come about.
Yeah, how they decided on the DeLorean. So. Yeah, the end of Act 1 is...
By the way, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
The one thing I remember reading about this was, and this you might be hitting this, is I think this was on Wikipedia, so it could be totally false, but that Spielberg kind of stole the whole nuke the fridge concept from this. Yeah,
I'll get there. I'm going to go in
I've read that. I don't know if
order.
I believe...
It is. It's in the original script. Yes.
No, I'm saying that Spielberg stole
Oh.
it.
Oh, well,
I don't know if I
saying
believe that part.
Not literally stole, but inspired by.
that there is a nuke the fridge type scene
Yes.
in this.
So okay, we'll get there. That's
I just don't believe Spielberg would.
No,
he wasn't
not
thinking
steal. We're
Yeah.
saying borrowed
Used.
or inspired by. Yeah, Jamie. It's on the end. It's the last one. Lorraine and George's relationship in the original draft, there was no motivation given for why she connects with him and falls in love with him. That backstory about George almost getting hit by a car and her having to nurse him to help didn't exist. So it was just because. And to me, that's like a huge.
So now, how did Marty interfere with that?
I don't know those details,
Oh,
but
okay,
I know
yeah.
that line.
I've never heard that before.
The Nightingale effect, where a nurse falls in love with their patient,
Yeah.
was specifically chosen for Doc to say it because it's a scientific phenomenon, and that was like the genesis of it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I mean that's huge.
That's insanely
That's
huge. What did they do to make Marty interfere with it?
I don't know.
Did they just explain it with the butterfly effect,
I
like
don't know.
his mere
I'm sure
action
it's
of
out
being
there,
there?
obviously.
Yeah, the script. I've seen the script out there. You can
The
check it
81
out.
one? The 81 draft?
I've seen it.
Marty's urgency, the early drafts had no photo. So all the
It's just
stakes were the
him
same.
disappearing, maybe?
I don't know, but the photo was a late addition, which
Okay.
is, that's, you think, how can I
didn't know that either.
visualize the countdown? I need something else. That photo.
So I didn't know these. I don't know these.
And this is the last one is Jamie, the climax. In the first draft, they had to leave town and go to some other desert base
I think
location.
Nevada.
Like they had to they never set it up. They had to go to this whole new place with all these new people and all these new things, and they had to use the power of an atomic bomb to get back to the future.
Do you know that could put? I could see how that's a first draft thought because they're dealing with the 50s here,
Right.
so there's some sort of like atomic scare thing going on. Sci-fi
Right.
movies
That's
from the 50s.
we could use that.
Yeah, it seems
and
like
also
it makes
like
sense.
how do we get the power? And then like the problem solving.
Did they use that in
lightning
Howard
bolt.
the Duck?
It's almost like
the bad guy Howard the Duck.
it's almost
Yeah.
like that line that Marty and Doc are debating together about like there's only one thing that could give us this much power to get back to the future is an atomic bomb.
Yeah.
And then they go, wait, what if it was a lightning bolt?
Mm-hmm.
Like the problem solving to get to these places.
Something that can only happen one time.
One
right?
time.
Yeah.
Timely fashion.
How do they know it? Right.
I stumbled upon this article and I was so happy because I think it's very informative and it's very interesting and it's
So give the plug to that article again.
H.R. DaCosta, Scribe Meets World, and she has great books too. Yeah.
So that's actually a lesson on rewrites right there.
Mm-hmm. The power of
rewriting.
Yeah, it didn't start like a masterpiece at all.
So get your vomit draft out.
Yeah, man.
And then change
Keep
your monkey to a
working.
dog.
4 years minimum. I don't know the exact date, but that date is 4 years from the eventual script they use. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know it started in 1980.
So before Romancing the Stone, then?
I think so.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
much before.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah. And before that, time travel movies were not prevalent, right? There's the time machine, and then
people hadn't tapped into the fun factor of it.
When was Star Trek 4? That was 80s,
That was
late
after.
80s. That was
Yeah,
late
that was
80s,
after.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that had to be after it because that was kind of playing off of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, this movie's also the reason Bill and Ted didn't have a van. It's kind of funny because Bill and Ted originally had the van, and then they went to something more stationary.
That's so interesting. You wonder if they knew about each other, if the scripts both
I think
were
Bill
out
and Ted
there.
was reacting to Back to the Future success.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, because the original draft was their actual party van turned into a.
That works so well, man.
Yeah.
The
right.
the
It's
phone
just funny
booth,
that it reversed itself.
Yeah, that's
You
so
know,
weird.
the
The phone booth is
stationary.
iconic, but like the party van fits them so.
Right. Right.
I think one of my favorite shows as a kid was Voyagers. Did you ever see Voyagers?
Never did.
No.
It was like my favorite show.
It was a time travel show.
It was a time travel show about a guy named Phineas Bogg and a kid, and they would go around and they'd fix. It was a little like
Phineas Bogg.
Phineas
is a
Bogg
great
was the
name.
guy's name. He was kind of this swashbuckling dude. He was like this good-looking guy with the deep voice. And there was a little kid that was kind of like a little kid Shia LaBeouf kind of kid.
Okay.
And they used to go around and fix problems in history. So every week they'd go to a different historical
like
timepiece.
Quantum Leap did.
Like Quantum
Yeah.
Leap. It was very similar
Or
to Quantum
Sliders,
Leap,
maybe.
but more
Yeah.
more I don't know, pulpy or
Okay.
something. You know, it was like let's fix Genghis Khan didn't. Well, I don't know if they
How
would do
about that?
but Abraham Lincoln didn't do this, so we gotta.
Was that
make sure.
before this?
It was before that.
Ah.
Yeah. No, one of the first time travel movies I can think of that I saw as a kid was Time Bandits.
Mhm.
That was my.
Yeah.
Is that before Back to the Future?
I think it's
I'm pretty
earlier.
sure. I'm pretty sure. I was
Yeah.
I'll look it up, but I think
I
that was
think it's
early
earlier.
'80s, like
The history of time
81.
travel movies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
jeez.
Well, is there anything? Well, I mean,
I think we've
I
hit
think,
on
I think we hit everything we wanted to.
Yeah.
Because Back to the Future is such a perfect movie
Yeah.
to talk about.
Yeah, Time Bandits, 1981.
Mm,
Oh,
there you go.
So what do we learn from Back to the Future, guys?
I learned that maybe Marty does have an arc.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna say that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The All Is Lost is something I've confirmed with you. You know, I still don't believe it has a true All Is Lost, and that's
Missing
interesting,
that.
and it works just fine.
Yeah.
I don't. Miss
I guess what I was trying to say earlier was
Maybe
like
not missing, but
the
Yeah.
emotion that comes from the All Is Lost. I feel like it's supplanted by the writing of the letter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like while that might not count, I feel like that's the
No,
moment in the movie that would
Mm.
fill in that spot
I think
with the emotional gravity.
I think
Does that make sense?
I think you hit a key point. The problems with some of these writing gurus and gurus in general
Me?
is
Oh.
what you just said, and it's hard to put into words. But sometimes you don't have to hit the beats. But you have to
Absolutely.
understand the emotions of why it goes there. And if
Yeah.
you can hit that, you're okay.
without the beat making sense.
That-
Yeah.
that's why like some movies don't really have inciting incidents or
Right.
something, or they come late, but they know why it needs to be
You
there.
still
and they figure
enjoy
out.
it.
They work around it.
Yeah.
You know? There's something else there
Yeah.
that's taking its place.
And like, then you can see how like masters kind of play with it. Like
Mhm.
Coen Brothers,
All
Tarantino,
the time.
they all kind of play with
Yeah.
that
Coen
stuff.
Brothers all the time.
Yeah. They play with that stuff. They don't have the page 25, right?
Yeah.
that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a
Well,
good
I
point.
did. I mean, that the All Is Lost thing is something that I did not ever think about with Back to the Future. But
Mhm.
Marty's got an arc. All right, guys, we did it.
Thank you for
50
listening.
and
50.
Thank you for listening up until now. Like,
yeah.
if you have,
You've been listening to us for 50 plus hours.
Yeah.
or even just 1 hour.
you
Yeah,
just won.
thank you.
Thank you. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's just been a fun thing.
Yeah.
So
Bring a friend.
Yeah.
Invite a friend.
yeah,
Next-
like we
next
never
week.
do that. We-
Bring a friend episode. I don't know what that
well, share the frickin' thing. You know, if
Yeah,
you can, do
thanks.
us a favor.
I think Jamie finally did a real legit long plug, and it's a long time coming. Like
Yeah.
your plugs are usually like maybe like 5 seconds. That was a good plug.
Okay,
At 50
good,
episodes, it's about. Hey, I have been told that I don't tell people that like what my site is. Like
Do it,
I say I'm
do
a
it.
script consultant. Hey,
This episode
I
50.
am-
Do it.
Script Butcher, www.scriptbutcher.com. I am
Oh, you should-
usually booked about 90 days in advance, but I'm fortunate of that. But yeah, if you want notes on your script, hell, it's episode 50. Why not do the plug?
And, subscribe to Thunder Grunt on your favorite podcast app. This is one show. We've got 4 active shows. I'm on 2 of them. They're all my friends. I do this because I want my friends to have a place to do this stuff. Please subscribe.
I'm grateful. I'm
Yes.
grateful, Bob.
So-
this started out of a Facebook
Conversation.
conversation.
Yeah. So I please support us, follow us on the Thunder Grunt, get your friends to do it. And if you have any questions, find us on Twitter or
Or-
email us at
Writers Blockbusters Podcast at gmail.com.
right. And buy Jamie's book.
This
Nomad.
is Plug Central. I
Nomad.
love it.
Well,
Yeah, everybody turned it off 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, they
so
did.
Plug away. Say whatever you want.
say whatever you want. Yeah. Nomad those your book and buy that.
Nomad on Audible.
Hell yeah.
Follow my YouTube channel, youtube.com/thundergrunt. And if you see us on the street, give us a hug.
Yeah.
Don't do that, actually. At all.
But thank you
Yeah,
so much
thank
for
you.
listening.
Thank you. And thank you guys for
Thank
doing
you,
it, too.
Bob.
Thank you,
Jamie.
Bob.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jimmy.
You have just listened to Writers Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring 2 professionals and another guy. Available only on Thunder Grunt.